Palestinians are returning to 16 million tons of rubble, and there's concern that evidence that lies under the ruins could be erased. So will the ceasefire make genocide harder to prove? And is there enough international political will to investigate war crimes in Gaza? This is Inside Story. Hello, welcome to the programme. I'm Adrian Finighan. 2 years of Israeli attacks on Gaza have killed nearly 68,000 Palestinians, including 20,000 children. For now, the bombing campaign has largely halted, but the Israeli military's actions in the past 24 months were live-streamed, documented and archived in unprecedented detail. In September, a United Nations Commission of Inquiry found that Israel had committed genocide in Gaza. And this week, South Africa stated that the ceasefire will not affect its genocide case against Israel at the International Court of Justice. But the ICJ lacks the resources to carry out arrests unless UN member countries decide to act. So will Israel be held accountable, or will impunity become the new norm? We'll put that to our guests in just a moment. But first, a report from Alexandra Byers.
A fragile ceasefire appears to be holding in Gaza. The sound of the Israeli bombs obliterating the strip largely silent. But the calls for justice and accountability are only getting louder. Around the world, there is a sense of unfinished business. From Spain.
Y además la paz no puede significar el olvido. No puede significar
Peace cannot mean forgetting. It cannot mean impunity. There are ongoing procedures in the International Court. I believe that those who were the main actors of the genocide that was perpetrated in Gaza will have to answer to justice.
To South Africa.
We do believe that in the end, real justice must be done to the people of Palestine.
To the United Nations Special Rapporteur on Palestine, Francesca Albanese, writing on social media, peace without justice, respect for human rights and dignity, without reparations and guarantees of non-repetition, is not sustainable. In 2 years, Israel has killed nearly 68,000 people in Gaza, injured more than 170,000, and created more child amputees than any other conflict in the world. Israel is accused of genocide at the International Court of Justice in a case brought by South Africa, and its actions have already been declared a genocide by a UN-backed commission, as well as genocide scholars, Israeli legal experts, and international NGOs.
Genocide is occurring and is being done by the state of Israel. That's our conclusion.
But what makes this case unique is that for the first time in history, this genocide was live-streamed. Sniper fire targeting children, schools and hospitals destroyed, civilians under attack, Israeli politicians making public statements of intent, a key part of the definition of genocide.
We're fighting against human animals, and we're acting accordingly.
Rights groups and UN staff have documented these crimes meticulously, but there are also efforts to conceal and even destroy that evidence. Palestinian journalists have been killed, international reporters banned, tech companies deleting and censoring Palestinian accounts, because genocide can only proceed without witnesses. Alexandra Byers, Al Jazeera, for Inside Story.
Let's bring in our guests. From Haifa, we're joined by Sawsan Zaher, a Palestinian human rights lawyer. From Oslo, we're joined by Dr. Mads Gilbert, a researcher and medical doctor who's worked in Palestinian healthcare for more than 30 years. And from London, we're joined by Niamh Gordon, a professor of international law at Queen Mary University of London. A warm welcome to you all. Sawsan, let's start with you. Despite what South Africa says, will the ceasefire impact upon the cases that are already underway against Israel in The Hague?
I think that it should not, because as Francesca Albanese said, and as all the lawyers and institutions are saying as well, ceasefire cannot be implemented and cannot be achieved without accountability, not only for the main perpetrator, which is Israel, because it did execute a genocide against Gaza, but also towards foreign governments who have been complicit with what Israel has done, with this crime of the crime, as it has been described. Let us not forget that the responsibility on third state parties to prevent genocide is already anchored in the UN Genocide Convention from 1950. And the ICJ has already issued the orders in the South Africa versus Israel case already in January 2024. So even if genocide was not yet achieved back then, now after 1 year and a half, nobody can say that we didn't know, we were not able to act, and so on. Plus, we need to add that the same third state parties who were ordered as well by the ICJ to act to prevent the genocide, who also recognized Palestine, which basically means...
Yeah. I'm sorry to interrupt. The 20-point ceasefire plan requires, among other things, the reform of the Palestinian Authority, quote, as outlined in various proposals, including President Trump's 2020 peace plan, which says the US will only recognize a Palestinian state if it ceases what it calls judicial warfare against the state of Israel. Prime Minister Netanyahu reiterated that when he was in Washington last month. Is that going to get in the way? I mean, if whoever ends up governing Gaza after the transitional government that is planned to be put into place drops their legal actions against the state of Israel, I mean, how could it go any further?
Well, you know, the action or the legal action in the ICJ, Palestine was not part of it. It was South Africa versus Israel, and South Africa basically submitted the suit based on its own responsibility, based on the UN convention. The ceasefire, the Trump plan, did not involve Palestine in it. And we are talking about ceasefire and recognizing a state and transitional justice without having the Palestinian people as part of the sides that should have the right to discuss their own future, to discuss who will govern them. And it is not to Trump or to any other foreign government to rule or to decide who will govern and who will lead Palestine and the Gazans, families and people in Gaza towards a sustainable justice, especially when there is no mention of any kind of accountability. There is no mention of what will happen with all the proceedings. It's not the ICJ alone. It is not that the South Africa versus Israel suit alone. We have the ICC arrest warrants nobody had said anything about its implementation after Trump plan. We have the ICJ advisory opinion from July 2024 about the illegality of Israel's occupation. So we are talking about something that is related to economic interest and not peace and not ceasefire and not human rights and implementing international law for the Palestinians.
Okay, Mads, you have worked on the ground in Gaza on numerous occasions, although, as I understand it, Israel wouldn't let you in after its campaign on Gaza began after October the 7th. Many of your colleagues, however, worked there throughout the war. Would you and your colleagues expect to be called to give evidence to any war crimes trial, if there was to be one?
Well, certainly I hope so. And I first of all hope that the Palestinian medical professionals, my colleagues in Gaza, will be called to bear witness, and their leaders like the Minister of Health in Gaza, Dr. Youssef Abrish, because don't forget that Gaza had a very well-developed medical education and research system before the Israeli occupation army bombed Al-Azhar University and the Islamic University. So these are the key witnesses, those who have been on the ground and who are Palestinians themselves. Now, there is already planned a big Gaza tribunal in Turkey this weekend, actually, in Istanbul, which is the third meeting in the Gaza tribunal. So there is already ongoing sort of popular legal tribunals to try to bear witness and to collect witness testimony and make a legal judgment, like there happened after the 2009 attack and the 2014 attack, and also after the attack on Beirut in 1982, the McBride Commission. However, these commissions have, by and large, been overlooked, despite the fact, or because of the fact, that the proofs of illegality when it comes to attack on protected civilian structures, these proofs are so overwhelming, and it does not only pertain to the last 2 years. Israel has had a method of attacking healthcare, education systems, and civilian infrastructure for as long as I have been working with the Palestinian healthcare, and that is more than 40 years. So this is a pattern. This is nothing new. And the big problem we are talking about is the fact that Israel has enjoyed international impunity from all their war crimes for the last 40, 50 years.
Niamh, listening to what Mads was saying there, that there's a pretty high threshold in the law in terms of proving genocide. As Alexandra was saying in her report at the start of the programme, Israel's actions in Gaza have been carried out in plain sight. They've been live streamed, recorded on video, documented and catalogued in unprecedented detail. Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, they've accused Israel of committing genocidal acts. The UN Commission we were talking about found in September that Israel had committed genocide. Israel, of course, strongly rejects the charge. Is this mountain of evidence going to be enough in the eyes of the law to secure a verdict of genocide? Will it conclusively prove intent, for example? To what extent is intent the key here?
Intent is very important to prove in a court of law when we're discussing genocide, and there's two kinds of intent. One is exclamations made by political leaders, military commanders, and soldiers. And I have to say that from what I know, the South African team has 120 pages full of quotes with genocidal intent from Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Herzog all the way down to the soldier on the ground. And intent can be proven through a pattern of actions, like what Mads said about the systematic attacks on healthcare systems or on schools. And what we have seen is that it's not single attacks that are taking place in Gaza, but there's a systematic method to the attacks on healthcare, and that also proves intent. So I don't think that the South African team will have a problem proving intent. Intent has been all over the place, and I think it will. I actually think that the court will rule that genocide has taken place. The problem is that the court will rule only in a few years, while we want accountability now.
Of course, we'll come to that, the time that it takes in just a moment. I just wonder, having said that Israel strongly rejects the charge of genocide, how might it argue against the charge of intent in a court of law? To a layperson like me, and bearing in mind what you've said about what Israeli politicians have been saying over the course of the war, it's obvious to someone like me that there was intent. But how can Israel argue otherwise in a court of law against what appears to be such compelling evidence?
Israel's using what I would call the lesser evil argument, saying basically, listen, we could have flattened Gaza to the ground, not only 70% of the building, but 100% of the building. If we wanted to commit genocide, we could have killed not only, 70,000 or 100,000 people, but 200 and 300. We have the capacity to kill 500,000. The fact that we didn't proves that we weren't intending to do genocide. That is Israel's argument. The problem with this argument, that you can always show that you can be more cruel than you were. And therefore, I think it is a very weak argument in the court.
Sawsan, a lot of evidence is still likely buried under the huge amounts of rubble that much of Gaza has been reduced to. How important is it that investigators get to sift through this rubble, and will they get the chance to do so before the cleanup and the rebuilding of Gaza gets underway?
Yeah, I just first want to address in a short sentence the issue of intent, and just remind everyone that Israel government had already in 2007 issued an order declaring all Gaza as an enemy, and whoever is an enemy throughout the history is being dehumanized. In addition to that, the blockade as well was since 2007, and for ages Israel has systematically been violating Palestinians' rights in Gaza in all way possible. Now, of course, evidence is one of the most important things. And what makes this genocide unique is the fact that, as you mentioned before, the violations and all the incidents are being live streamed on our mobiles and TVs. And this is very important because it will help and assist proving the special intent to the crime of genocide. There are many organizations, local ones, which are the most important here because journalists have not been allowed, foreign journalists have not been allowed to enter Gaza. As we all know, local journalists have been killed, unfortunately, as we all know. So whoever is there is still trying to basically document what they can on the ground. But in addition, we know that Human Rights Watch, Amnesty, the South Africa team, and recently as well, I learned about a very new and interesting Israeli project, actually, led by historian Lee Mordechai, which is called Bearing Witness, which has more than 100 volunteers with more than 3,500 local resources from the ground that all would help in proving that there was intent, because this is the obstacle. And I just want to add something. One would ask, why is it important for Israel with the genocide? Because then for them it's about guilt. It's about making the conversation equivalent to the Jewish Holocaust in World War II. It's about blaming all or most of the Israeli society in the academia and elsewhere, and the army, of basically being guilty in one of the most severe crimes in history.
Sawsan, you raised the issue of local journalists on the ground in Gaza. I want to come to that in just a moment with Niamh. But first, Mads, you wanted to get in there.
Yeah, because I'm a medical doctor. I'm a professor of medicine. I very much appreciate the profession of law and legal considerations. But as was said, as we are deliberating all these legal formalities, whether or not this is to be called a genocide, people are getting killed every day. And you were referring in the opening to the latest number from the UN OCHA report, which says 67,938 killed in Gaza. The Lancet published a study in January, a peer-reviewed study, showing that this number is around 41% underestimated, a scientific study. So the real number is closer to 100,000 killed. Among them, according to Israeli military secret papers, 81% are civilians. According to other studies, 90% are civilians. These are hard facts. We know it already. Number two, the Lancet also published in January a study on life expectancy in Gaza. In 2022, life expectancy in Gaza and the West Bank was 74 and a half years. That's how long you could expect to live. After the first year of the Israeli occupation forces' attack on Gaza and the starvation and the destruction of the healthcare, life expectancy in Gaza has been reduced by 35 years, meaning it's been cut in half from 75 to 35 years. This has never ever been reported in the history of medicine. And this is the combined effect of the bombing, the killing, the bleeding, the infections, the starvation, the lack of healthcare for ordinary diseases, and the total pressure on the civilian population. This is the silent, unnoticed genocide. And it's horrifying that Israel has been allowed to make the living conditions in Gaza such that in only 1 year, life expectancy has been reduced by 35 years. So what more do we need? The evidence is all there. It has to stop now.
Niamh, we were talking, Sawsan was talking about the work of local journalists who've been documenting this from day one in Gaza. This week, the social media giant Meta, which owns Facebook and Instagram and WhatsApp, permanently deleted the account of the Palestinian journalist Salah al-Jafarawi, who was shot and killed last Sunday. Now, he'd spent the last 2 years documenting Israel's relentless bombardment and alleged war crimes. He had something like 4.5 million followers on Instagram. Francesca Albanese, the UN Special Rapporteur for the occupied Palestinian territory, said on X that deleting a killed journalist's account is to kill them twice. Given that so much reporting of events inside Gaza was published on social media and can possibly constitute evidence before a court of law, could the owners of these platforms face legal consequences if previously published material, like Salah's, is destroyed? Are they legally compelled to keep it, even if they're denying public access to it?
Yes, but before that, let me just say that Israel did not allow foreign journalists to enter the Gaza Strip. Israel did not allow investigation teams to enter the Gaza Strip. And Israel killed over 260 Palestinian journalists, the most killed in any conflict, and more than World War I, World War II, the Vietnam War, the Iraq War put together. And all this in an attempt to erase and to cover up evidence of war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide. And now what we're seeing is an attempt to erase evidence that had been gathered on the ground by Palestinians who courageously, against fire and against genocide, against the bombing, basically created an archive of genocide. And they created that archive on Twitter, they created that archive on Instagram, they created that archive on Facebook. And now that archive exists, and it's a very important archive. And if these mega Googles, Facebooks, Elon Musk's start erasing this data, they can be brought to justice for erasing evidence of atrocity crimes, which are the worst kinds of crimes in the book. And so I think that there will be cases to be made against them in national courts.
Okay, and Niamh, we're rapidly running out of time, so I need, if possible, a very brief answer, and I'll come to you in just a second, Mads. I know you want to get in. Why does it take the wheels of international justice so long? The ICJ is not expected to issue a ruling on the case brought by South Africa until the end of 2027 at the earliest. Why so long?
The wheels of justice always take long. They take long on the national level, they take long on the international level. But I think we have a unique case here, a case that, as everyone has said, has been streamlined. There's overwhelming evidence here. And what I'm surprised at is not so much the international court that's taking it so long, but the state parties in Europe, the UK government, my government here, that are unwilling to intervene in order to prevent the genocide while they're seeing it in front of their own eyes. And I think what we have here is a case not only of genociders carrying out genocide, but a whole range of parties that are complicit in this genocide and also need to be held accountable.
Okay, Mads, I have about a minute to give you. You wanted to come in there.
Yeah. In addition to the more than 250 brave journalists they have killed in Gaza, they have also systematically killed another group of witnesses, namely healthcare workers. My colleagues, doctors, nurses, paramedics, medical students, more than 1,700 healthcare workers have been killed on purpose in Gaza. And they are, of course, incredibly important sources of the scientific base of giving the argument that this is a war crime. And it's 4 times more likely to be killed in Gaza today when you're a healthcare worker than if you are a civilian. So in my opinion, we have to work tirelessly on the legal aspects and support the ICJ and all that work. But at the same time, we have to realize that this is not just a genocide in Gaza. This is a decline in humanity. This is a moral collapse in the Western world, and it is a return to the most dark times of colonial settler politics and the eradication of indigenous people. That must not be forgotten, and that is the lesson. If you don't stop it, who's next?
Sawsan, do you as a Palestinian have any faith in international law? The US is a member of the ICJ. It's not a member of the ICC. Has what's been happening in Gaza shown that international law is impotent if states like Israel and those accused of complicity with it are able to get away with ignoring international law for so often and so long? Do you think that anyone is going to face justice for what happened in Gaza? Very briefly, if you can, please.
Yes, I think that I hope that foreign governments will make sure, and international community will make sure, that the perpetrator, Israel, will be basically indicted and come to justice in all forums possible. But I also want here to mention that as long as Israel, as a perpetrator, is not convinced to end the genocide, because it hasn't been complicit with international law for ages. The Israeli public inside of Israel, in its majority, is pro-going and continuing the genocide. Not only genocide in Gaza, but they are also in support of annexation of the West Bank, continuing the systemized discrimination against Palestinians, against Israel. So we must see Israel's genocidal mentality and regime, how it's being implemented against all Palestinians, and this must stop. Therefore, foreign governments indeed must continue in implementing all international tools in order to bring Israel to justice.
Okay. There, I'm afraid we must end it. Many thanks indeed. Sawsan Zaher, Mads Gilbert and Niamh Gordon. And thanks for watching. You can see the programme again at any time by going to the website. That's at aljazeera.com. For further discussion on the issue, go to our Facebook page. You'll find that at facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. And of course, you can join the conversation on X, our handle there at AJ Inside Story. From me, Adrian Finighan, and the team here in Doha. We'll see you again. Bye for now.